Hello and welcome to the last episode of Statford Bridge for the Premier League season, where the magic number is 69. Nice. Chelsea put up 69 points after beating Nottingham Forest the final day of the season to clinch Champions League football at Stamford Bridge in 2025-2026. And I'm not gonna go deep on like all the modeling and all this stuff, but like if you've been listening to I think this is episode 46 or 47. If you've been listening to me talk for between 10 and 30 minutes for the past 47 instances, you will have heard me say many, many times that Chelsea are the fourth or fifth best team and they're going to finish between 65 and 70 points and they're going to make Champions League. And I said it over and over and over. I think the lowest I came was like when Jackson and Palmer and Nani all went out. I was like, yeah, it's a 30% chance because I thought they'd drop more points than they would. And I thought some of those players would be a lot longer than they would. Regardless, that was probably the lowest I got. The highest I got, I think, was like 81 points before that stretch at Christmas against all the bad teams where Chelsea magically dropped points. Putting that aside, Chelsea beat Forest 1-0. This game is of zero consequence. Nobody cares what happened in this game. Nobody cares about, I don't know, any of, there were no tactical things. Chelsea created two chances. Forest created two chances. Chelsea scored one of theirs. Forest scored neither of theirs. I thought Chelsea were like pretty good defensively until the big Chris Wood chance at the end. I also think both big Chris Wood chances are like massively overrated. Like both of them, he's falling over and just gets a toe and just gets a head to. And then the volley is like leaping with his shin. The same way I think the Pedro Neto chance is way overrated. Like I think both of those are significantly more difficult to score than the XG thinks. So whatever, deflate everybody's totals. I don't care. And similarly, the Colwill chance is almost certainly more than 0.6. It's an empty goal. And it's rolling on the ground, and there's no goalkeeper. Like all of those things, I think it's more than a 0.6. So putting those aside, and again, nobody cares. Chelsea actually showed like a little bit of like mental fortitude to hang on. I thought they defended the set pieces mostly really well against the team who was like, that was all they really had. I didn't think in open play they got very much at all. I thought Levi Colwill was exceptional. I thought Cole Palmer was like, I said to somebody that one of my favorite things about the run in is that Cole Palmer was like mostly pretty terrible in that like he didn't play well. He couldn't do the creative goal scoring chance creation things. Like he still put up, like, I don't know, if I go look at Cole Palmer's like output from his most recent games, I'm sure it's going to be like he put up more XG and more XA than I think he did. Like, yeah, 0.4, 0.6, 0.2, 1.1, I guess 1.8 if you include the penalty, 1.1, whatever. I think the thing that was the most impressive for me in this stretch from Cole Palmer is that even when he like didn't have it, right? Like 1 goal, 3 assists in that stretch, even when he didn't have it, man, he just put his head down and worked defensively. Like in a way that I thought Palmer defensively was always going to be something you had to coach around and you had to design your team around the fact that this guy is simply not going to defend to the level you need him to, right? Like, it has been so beneficial for Liverpool to have Salah, who, like, tries really hard defensively. And they won the league this year. They freed him up a little bit, but, like, he still works really hard. You look at PSG, they remove Mbappe, who doesn't defend, and all of a sudden they look unbelievable. It's really hard to be a top-level team with nobody who defends. And I thought that was something you would have to like plan around for Palmer. And man, did he put his head down and graft the last quarter of the season. So that is, to me, a really, really positive development that I hope sticks around. But Ultimately, Chelsea end up on 69 points, really close to what the modeling had. Didn't have to be that high. 67 was enough, which I felt pretty confident about. Like, it was just going to be really unlikely that all of Forest, Newcastle, and Villa were going to put up north of 67. It really was. Like, if you look at Villa's run-in, like, yes, they lose to United, but it's like win, 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 win. Like, there's a few losses in there, but it's a lot of wins. And the same is true for Newcastle. Like, Newcastle went on an absolute heater the last third of the season. Like, and this is part of why I was so confident about Chelsea, was that I thought they were better than all these teams, and they started way ahead. Like, look at this run from Newcastle. Like, that's pretty insane. It's very unlikely. Every game longer that run goes, the less likely it goes. And so that, I think, ultimately I was pretty confident about in the math. And, like, it's funny, you can go back and look. I went and searched my tweets and just, like, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69 points, just to see, like, where I was at. And, like, you can go look, like, in May, I think 67, 68 is at an average season. Could get some finishing luck. Buy somebody better than I expect, blah, blah, blah. This is May. This is a year ago tomorrow. 65, 20 plus 25, 67, 68. Like, some of this math was like me fiddling around with, like, different players coming in on transfers. May 19th, 68. September 29th, 67, 68. There's another one, October 6th, I had a 69. Like, Chelsea were kind of there all season, except for, like, November, where they went north of that. But they were kind of hovering around there the whole year. And, like, I took a bit of a victory lap on this day. I'm absolutely not going to lie about that. But I think one of the things that is important for this, and, like, if you are a listener of this podcast, like, you listen to me read spreadsheets every week. Like, you know that this stuff works, or you're at least open to it if you're listening to me talk about this. But, like, the reason I highlight this is not because like, I'm trying to say Chelsea are this amazing team, because, like, the reality is like, we're not. We were 15 points off the title. I think Liverpool were probably more like a 90-point team when you think about they won the league pretty early and then, like, drop a whole bunch of games after they win the league. And I think when you start from that place, it's like, yeah, there is a pretty big gap. Like, I think Chelsea are probably like 20 goals, right? Because when you think about the currency of a football team, you should be thinking in terms of goals. And I think Chelsea are something like 20 goals total. You can concede 20 goals fewer, you can score 20 goals more, whatever you want. But something like 20 goals away from, like, a legitimate title charge. And the reason I think stuff like that is important is, like, we could take Chelsea's team, the players they had in May, look at the players they added, know nothing about the new coach. We had no idea how we had ideas, but nothing about Enzo Maresca went into the model. All we had was, like, XG, some possession value stuff, and some wage info. And you get a model that's pretty tight. Like, the only team that my model really, really missed on is Spurs. It liked Spurs way, way, way more than it ended up being. I still think they're way better than they ended up being. On XG, they're way better than they ended up being. They won Europa League. But Spurs is the only team it really missed on. It liked Villa, it liked Newcastle, but it firmly thought Liverpool might be the best team, and then Arsenal, City, Chelsea are, like, pretty firmly better than everybody else. And, like, that's kind of how it ended up being. If you look at, like, the XG table, like, Chelsea are the fourth best team on X points. They're the third best team on XG. They're the fourth best defense. Like, they just were amongst the best teams. And so I think the point that I want to make is, like, we can tell with a pretty high degree of confidence based on the players that are going to be on the team how good the team is going to be. There are some managers who are like additive. There are some managers who are subtractive to that. I think Maresca is probably pretty neutral. I have his report card is done. I'll talk about it after the Conference League final. But like, we could tell with a high degree of confidence how good a team is going to be based on their recruitment. And Chelsea's recruitment has mostly been shit. And I am really, really excited about Champions League. I am so excited that Chelsea qualified for Champions League. And I'm going to talk after I finish this rant about how much better Chelsea's metrics were this year, and like some of the trends that I think are real and some of the trends I don't think are real, and like all these things that I think are Maresca influenced. But Chelsea are not going to win a title if they don't buy more better players. Like, and I don't mean that in like the more better way. I mean like more as in many of them, or plural, and better as in better than they are currently buying. Because if I say Chelsea have to make up 20 goals, okay, how do you do that? Where do those 20 goals come from? And we'll do transfer stuff later in the window and blah, 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 blah. But like, where do 20 goals come from? They come from better players. And it's not going to come from one player, because I promise you are not going to buy a striker who replaces Jackson who scores 30 league goals. Like, that's not, I think that's very unlikely. But can you get another striker who's going to play the 1590s that Jackson doesn't play every year and gets you 10 goals? And then can you get a winger who's going to get you 7 goals? And does Andre Santos get you 3 more goals than whoever he's replacing? Like, can you do it in the aggregate? So the point is, the math is right. The math is almost always right. If it wasn't, people wouldn't do it. So it is what it is. In terms of the sexy spreadsheet, you put the whole season in. It is very clear at the macro level, Chelsea are definitely better than last year. If I zoom in to make this easier to read, Chelsea are 100% better than last year at the macro level. Not hugely, not title challengers. Like, these are firmly not the metrics of a title challenger. These are like pretty considerably worse than like even the Tuchel teams, but they are firmly top 4 team metrics. Chelsea were something like a 0.6 non-penalty expected goal difference team this year. Pretty close on goal difference. Their XG was that of a very good team. It was the non-penalty expected goal difference is basically the same as last year, which I think is a real positive, while reducing the expected goals against tremendously. Chelsea conceded 20 fewer goals this year than last year. That's like a huge win. And as much as like there are stylistic qualms about how Maresca chooses to play, I do think you can see actually a really significant benefit to how he's chosen to play in terms of the defensive side of things, where at no point did Chelsea feel particularly solid defensively this season, and yet their defensive metrics come out as quite good purely by the volume of danger they contribute, even when that danger feels more dangerous, as it were. Just the volume of it is less. Like 1.43 XG against last year without penalties, 1.1 this year. That's pretty good. Shots for up a little bit, shots down or shots against way down. Like 4 shots against less a game is humongous. Box touches up a little bit, 3, but box touches against down 7. Again, like these are teams are taking fewer shots, they're getting into the box less frequently. Like that's tremendously valuable for you as a team. And then when you look at kind of the year-over-year season stuff, ignore some of the colors because I was lazy and I got bored. Points, expected points. The expected points are a little bit lower on Understat. Some places have them higher. Understat's model isn't great. I just threw it in here because it's here. The other thing to consider is that Chelsea spent many more minutes in winning positions this year. Chelsea also very stylistically, when they would start to win games, would defend much deeper. We've spoken at length about the tactical considerations that lead to game state effects. I think Chelsea were a team who particularly lent into those this year, whereas perhaps last year that was not the case. Goal difference, non-penalty expected goal difference, non-penalty XG down a little bit. Per Opta, it's probably pretty close. Uh, non-penalty xGA way down. Shots for are up. Shots against, as I said, way down. Box touches against, way down. PPDA, OPDDA, the same. Opponent build completion, about the same. Expected threat against, way down. Field tilt, way up. And so, like, all of those things lead to a team that's like, yeah, this team is considerably better than last year. I think the number that, like, I said something like a quarter to a half of a goal was like my number. It ended up being pretty close to the middle of those two at 0.33. Like, I think that feels about right for where this team is. And not all of that is Maresca. Some of that is stylistically. I think the way he plays, the way Chelsea chose to play this year is somewhat helpful for some of the players in the squad. But, like, when we were projecting out the season, right, a lot of the things that came out of that were like, Fofana is going to play more. James is going to play more. Lavia is going to play more. Because, A, it's unlikely that they're going to be that injured as they were again. But also, this does give credit to Maresca that he actually did quite a good job of keeping guys on the field. Like, Chelsea missed many fewer days due to injury this year than they did last year. They definitely faded in games more than they did, but, I mean, if you have better players on the pitch for longer, that probably comes out in the wash. And there are negative effects, like Chelsea didn't win as many penalties as they last year. That's mostly random noise. They gave up basically the same amount. And then you have the set piece side of things. Like, this does not include the Forest game, and I did not color code it, so it's just like a mess of numbers for you. But to give you the big picture things, Chelsea generated significantly more XG and more shots than they did last year. They have a higher XG per shot. They have a higher shots per corner. They have a higher XG per corner for. Their corner goals are a little bit lower. That's mostly finishing noise. Mostly, actually, Thiago Silva not being in the team, who was a very good attacker of set pieces last year. Chelsea certainly lacked that profile. And when you do, like, set piece goals per set piece, if you include wide free kicks, it's pretty similar. On the defensive side, we saw a pretty big improvement. XG is down, but it's almost entirely a function of shots going down. And shots going down mostly because they conceded many fewer corners. Shots per corner against is down, but XG per corner is actually a little bit up. XGA per corner is a little bit up, but when you concede like half as many corners, it's pretty good. So this was an area that the Chelsea were significantly better this season than they were last season. And the thing I view favorably in Maresca is, like, he let Bernardo Cueva do his thing, clearly. But I do think set pieces are a thing that you will see grow over time, where if you look at the season Cueva joins Brentford, they're, like, almost league average on set pieces. And that whole first season, they kind of putter around average. And then the second season, they really shoot up. And if you just think about it as a function of training time, how much training time did Chelsea really get this year is kind of an open question. But it's good progress nonetheless. So that, I think, is a very, very big positive coming out of the season. The last one I want to talk about is the rolling expected goals chart. This does not have the Forest game in here, but a couple things to think about. So, one, I think this, like, pretty accurately covers the feel of the season. Chelsea are really, really hot the first half. Then they have a dip, and then they come out of the dip and they're okay again. And then they have another dip where they're actually pretty bad. And then they finish the season not playing very well, but getting results and playing well enough. And if you look at the big trend lines here, the attack is going down and the defense is going down. And getting the defense down, like, sub 1 in the final third of the season, that's awesome. Like, to me, the big challenge for Enzo Maresca is the first half of the season you played, like, handbrake off, attack was pretty crazy, you ran pretty hot on some of your finishing stuff, but like you played pretty well. And then you hit a bad patch where you don't play well at all, mostly due to fatigue over the holidays. And you get scared. And then you play well and you don't pick up results for how well you play. Like they draw Palace in here, they draw Bournemouth in here, they lose to Ipswich, they lose to City, they get drilled by Brighton, they lose to Villa, and a whole bunch of games that they play like fine in. And you come out of that and he's like, all right, nope, brakes are on. We're not going anywhere. We're not conceding anything. And the end of the season was like very much deeper defending, much more conservative, like let's not concede anything. At the same time, neutered the attack. Where like, I don't know, if I was to go look at it, well, whatever, it's on here. You can see like they did not really put up a high number of expected goals in any of their games down the stretch, even against the weaker opponents. So the question for me and for Maresca and for recruitment is like, how do you keep this defensive? And like, you're not going to keep this. You cannot be a 0.5 XGA per game team. I think the goal, Chelsea were like a 43 to 45 non-penalty expected goals against team this year. I think the goal is like, can you get that number down to like 35? Can you get to sub 1? Is like a good goal. How do you keep that while keeping the attack at more like a 2 XG per game team? Like if you can be a 2 XG for a 1 XG against team, that to me is like a really good aim as a team. And I think some of that is going to be recruitment. I think when you look at players like Jadon Sancho and Nani Madueke, who I thought had a good season, and Pedro Neto, and like if you purely just sort the Chelsea team by goals, like yeah, Palmer gives you enough. Jackson probably should give you a little bit more. Nani in many other seasons gives you 10 goals, 5 assists, and you're feeling pretty good about it. 6 from midfield for Enzo is decent. 5 from a fullback is great. But then, like, your first choice wingers give you 7. Like, is that great? You don't really get anything from him, from Nkunku. You don't really get anything from João Felix. You don't really get anything from Tyreek George. Like, you just didn't get the cavalcade of other guys who played in attacking positions, just didn't really give you anything. You certainly didn't get enough out of them. So I think when you look at it from there, that is like the biggest question, is how do you keep the defensive number strong while improving the attack to like first half of the season levels? You don't have to be 2.5, but if you can be like 2 XG for, 1 XG against, that's the place to be. And while I think there's like, I popped in to check on Goldberg's stream briefly, and one of the things that somebody was saying was like, actually the pressure that's put on this team next season is going to be really, really high, because like if they don't immediately challenge for a title, people are going to be like, see, they aren't good enough, even if they take a season to like lock themselves in as a top 4. And like, look, if Chelsea went from like a 0.6 non-penalty goals team to a 0.8 non-penalty goals team, that would be progress to me, because that's like you're like a 75 point team, 77 points, something like that. That would be great. I'd be really, really happy with that. I think that would be solid progress. I just think that these things often don't happen as linearly or as smoothly as we think they do. And you look at, yes, Chelsea have a tremendous amount of young talent coming in and blah, 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 blah. And like, what's Esteval going to give you? And what about Kentry Pais? And who are they going to buy as a striker? And Liam Delap and blah, blah, blah. Like, all of those things are true. But then you also have the negative versions of the same processes. Like, Chelsea were very healthy this year. What happens if Levi Colwill tears his hamstring or breaks his ankle? What happens if Cole Palmer does his groin? and like misses half of a season? What happens if I don't know, Caicedo is probably one that you can't fade an injury to. What happens if Caicedo breaks his foot on international duty? Like, these things happen, and I think you have to be very mindful about insulating yourself against those. Where Arsenal are going to get hammered this season because they finish with 74 points or whatever it is, 72 points, and like they've nearly been dragged into a top 4 race. But also, like, Odegaard missed a huge chunk of the season. Saka missed a huge chunk of the season with injury, and they made a deep Champions League run, and blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I think they're pretty good. So, that's where I'm at. This has a lot of nothing to do with anything about the Champions League, but it was nice. Chelsea made the Champions League. That's fun. Enjoy that moment. I quite liked that the players were really excited about it. Like, I think too much is made about like somebody used the word tin pot, and like, but it's not even that. I think it's something too much is made about players being excited about things. Like, it's cool to be like stoic about your successes. Like the famous one is like the Derrick Rose shot where he hits an overtime or a buzzer beater to win a huge playoff game, and he's like stone faced, doesn't react. And it's like, yeah, it looks cool, but like, I'd actually rather players who play because for the love of winning and the excitement of winning over the avoidance of losing, and like this is what I have to do, because I think generally those like negative enforcements are less effective. And this, I think, is like the first legitimate achievement for most of these players. Like, Enzo Fernandez has won a World Cup, Reece James has won a Champions League, and that's kind of it. Like, the rest of the group has done nothing. So, and like, whatever, I'm sure Palmer has like medals with City, but he didn't really do anything. It is nice for them to like achieve something and build from there. And I hope they win the Conference League on Wednesday, because I do think like actually winning finals is a real thing, that like you're ready to play in those dangerous moments and those scary moments. And that Chelsea played, one of the things I was excited about this game against Forest was like, this was a game with legitimate pressure and real stakes. Like, if you played badly and lost, it would have legitimate consequences for some of your careers. And if Chelsea had lost and missed Champions League, it would have been like actually really bad. And so for them to turn up and play not terribly and to like manage that moment pretty maturely, I think is a really nice step for a group that has not handled it well in the past this season. And so now you go into a Conference League final against Real Betis, where again you are expected to win. And I think that's a cool moment for them. Anyways, I'm going to wrap it all there. I will not be streaming after Betis, but I will probably do a stream next weekend to talk about the transfer window ahead of the Club World Cup and some of the things I think Chelsea should do. We'll eventually go over Enzo Maresca's report card and all that sort of thing. But thank you for watching and listening this season. Like, I think the last stream of the season we had the most people come on. I think the episodes are like slowly growing. This has been a fun forum for me to like, I'm not going to lie to you, I do not script any of this, obviously, but it's been fun for me to like work through my own thoughts live for a lot of these. But I like sharing it with you guys. So anyways, that's all for me. As always, enjoy the soccer. And next season, enjoy the Champions League.